My name is Alexander Morrison, and I'm the family disappointment. At least, that's what my older brother James has told everyone for the past 6 years. The sister who never worked a real job. The one who lives off her trust fund. The black sheep who somehow has money but no ambition, no drive, no real accomplishments. What James doesn't know, what nobody in my family knows, is that I'm the reason his logistics company exists at all. If you want to see how this family dinner turned into an $8 million reckoning, stick with me. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button because you're going to want to see how this ends. I'm 34 years old. I graduated from MIT with degrees in computer science and applied mathematics. At 23, I co-founded a data analytics startup called Meridian Systems with two classmates. At 26, we sold it to Amazon for $180 million. My share after taxes was $52 million. At 27, I became an angel investor. For the past 7 years, I've invested in 43 companies. 12 have failed completely. 15 are still operating. 16 have been acquired or gone public. My current portfolio is worth approximately $340 million. I'm one of the most successful angel investors under 40 in the Boston tech scene. I'm also completely invisible to my family. They think I'm living off a modest trust fund our grandmother left me. $2 million that generates about $80,000 a year in dividends. They think I spend my days doing yoga, meeting friends for lunch, and generally floating through life without purpose. They think this because I let them think it. Here's the thing about me that I'm not proud of. I like knowing things other people don't know. I like the secret superiority of watching my family underestimate me while I quietly build an empire. It makes me feel safe in a twisted way. Protected. It also makes me lonely as hell. When I sold Meridian Systems at 26, I was so excited. Naive. I flew home to Chicago for a family dinner and announced that I'd just become a multimillionaire. I expected champagne, celebration, maybe some questions about what I'd built. My father nodded slowly and said, "That's a lot of responsibility, Alex. Don't let it change you." My mother smiled tightly. "That's wonderful, honey. James, tell everyone about your promotion." My brother James, who was 29 and had just been named regional manager at a freight company, went quiet for the rest of the dinner. He didn't congratulate me. He didn't ask questions. He just ate his mashed potatoes and stared at his plate. 3 weeks later, he stopped returning my calls. Looking back, I can see what happened. James had always been the successful one, the responsible one. Harvard MBA, steady career progression, the son who made our parents proud in ways they understood. My unexpected windfall disrupted the family hierarchy. It made everyone uncomfortable because they didn't know how to place me anymore. But here's where I made my first mistake. Instead of having hard conversations, I disappeared. I moved to a modest apartment in Cambridge. I drove a 5-year-old Prius. I dressed in jeans and sweaters. When family asked what I did all day, I'd shrug and say consulting projects here and there, nothing exciting. I told myself I was being humble, protecting the family dynamic, avoiding conflict. The truth? I was being a coward. It was easier to be underestimated than to fight for recognition. Easier to feel secretly superior than to demand respect openly. And so I became the family disappointment by design. The years passed. I built my portfolio quietly. I learned the rhythms of angel investing, the long due diligence, the patient capital, the inevitable failures alongside the spectacular wins. I got good at reading founders, understanding markets, seeing potential where others saw risk. I also got good at performing mediocrity for my family. At Christmas dinners, I'd talk about yoga classes I'd taken. At summer barbecues, I'd mention friends I'd had lunch with. Nobody asked follow-up questions. Nobody wondered how I afforded my life or what I actually did between social engagements. They'd already decided who I was. I'd helped them decide. James, meanwhile, climbed the corporate ladder. By 2017, he was a senior vice president at a national freight company. He talked about logistics with genuine passion, supply chains, last-mile delivery, warehouse optimization. He understood the industry deeply. He also talked about me with barely concealed disdain. Must be nice to have so much free time. He'd say when I mentioned taking a trip, "Some of us have meetings to get to." He'd joke when I seemed relaxed at family gatherings. The comments were small, plausibly deniable. He always said them with a smile, so if I objected, I'd look oversensitive. Death by 1,000 paper cuts disguised as brotherly teasing. I never pushed back. I just absorbed it, adding each comment to a mental ledger I told myself I wasn't keeping. In early 2018, James announced he was leaving his corporate job to start his own company, Anderson Logistics, a freight and supply chain management company that would leverage technology to compete with bigger players. The family was supportive but nervous. Starting a business was risky. James had a wife, Michelle, and they were talking about having kids. Was this the right time? James was confident. He had industry experience, good relationships, and a solid business plan. What he didn't have was capital. He'd saved $200,000 over the years, but he needed $2.5 million to get started properly. Warehouse space, trucks, technology systems, working capital, staff. He spent 6 months pitching investors and getting rejected. The logistics industry is capital-intensive and competitive. Nobody wanted to take the risk on a first-time founder with no entrepreneurial track record. I watched him struggle through family dinners, watched his confidence erode with each rejection, watched him come to gatherings looking exhausted and defeated, his big dreams slowly dying. And I made a decision that would define the next 6 years of our relationship. I would fund his company, anonymously. He'd never know it was me. I told myself I was being generous, helping my brother without making him feel indebted, avoiding the awkwardness of him owing his success to the sister he clearly resented. But if I'm honest, really honest, there was something else. I wanted to prove I was better than him. I wanted to watch him succeed and know, secretly, that I was the reason. I wanted to hold that power even if I never used it. That's not generosity. That's something darker. And it would eventually blow up in both our faces. I created Apex Capital Partners in October 2018. It was an LLC registered in Delaware with me as the managing member, but structured to keep my identity hidden. My attorney, Richard Chin, would be the face of the operation. All communications would go through him. Richard thought I was being paranoid. Most founders want to know their investors, he said. Building relationships is part of the value proposition. Not this time, I told him. Just make sure it's airtight. We put together a term sheet. $2.3 million in exchange for 30% equity, with favorable terms and patient capital expectations. No aggressive board control, no demanding monthly reports, no micromanaging. We'd be silent partners, letting James run the company his way. Richard reached out to James in November 2018. James called me that night, his voice vibrating with excitement. "Alex, you won't believe it. I got funding. Some investment firm called Apex Capital. They believe in the business." "That's amazing, James. I'm so happy for you. Maybe I can finally prove to everyone that I'm not just Dad's disappointing son who left a good corporate job." I remember feeling a pang at that. James, the golden child, also felt like a disappointment. We had more in common than I'd realized. "You're not a disappointment," I told him. "You're following your dream. That takes courage." "Thanks, sis. That means a lot." It was the warmest conversation we'd had in years. I hung up feeling genuinely good about my decision. That feeling didn't last. Anderson Logistics launched in January 2019. The first year was brutal, as logistics startups always are. The margins were razor thin, the competition fierce, the operations nightmarishly complex. There were months when the company barely broke even. There were moments when I wondered if I'd just lit $2.3 million on fire. But James worked. God, he worked. 80-hour weeks. Sleeping at the warehouse. Personally driving trucks when drivers called in sick. Whatever his flaws, my brother wasn't lazy. He threw himself into Anderson Logistics with everything he had. And my capital gave him runway. While competitors burned through their funding and folded, James had breathing room to build properly. He hired good people. He invested in the right technology. He weathered the inevitable storms without panicking. By the end of 2019, Anderson Logistics was still alive. By mid-2020, despite the chaos of the pandemic, they were profitable. The surge in e-commerce delivery demand turned out to be exactly what a scrappy logistics company needed. By 2022, James had 40 employees and $18 million in annual revenue. By 2024, he had 70 employees and $35 million in revenue. My brother was successful. His company was thriving. And with each quarterly report that came through Richard's office, with each dividend payment that hit my investment accounts, the dynamic between us got worse. Success changed James. Not in obvious ways. He still worked hard, still cared about his employees, still understood the business deeply. But his ego grew alongside his company. He started making comments at family gatherings. Small observations that always seemed to land on me. Real entrepreneurs understand sacrifice, he'd say over Thanksgiving turkey. We don't get vacation days. Building something from nothing is the most satisfying feeling, he'd announce at Christmas. Creating jobs, contributing to the economy. That's what matters. The comments were never directly about me, but they didn't need to be. The implication was clear. He was a builder, a contributor, a real adult. I was none of those things. I sat through these dinners in silence, knowing that the nothing he'd built from was actually $2.3 million of my money. Knowing that his board seat was occupied by my attorney. Knowing that every strategic decision he made was reported to me quarterly. I knew, and I said nothing. Part of me thought the truth would hurt him too much. Another part enjoyed the secret superiority. And another part, the part one didn't want to examine, was afraid of what would happen if I spoke up. Afraid of conflict. Afraid of his reaction. Afraid of becoming visible. So I let the comments accumulate. Let the resentment build. Let the ledger in my head grow longer and more detailed. At Easter 2023, James told our cousin Rachel, "Some people are builders and some people are just coasting." He glanced at me when he said it. At Dad's birthday in July 2023, he announced he'd made the Inc. 5,000 list of fastest growing companies. Everyone applauded. Mom posted about it on Facebook. I congratulated him genuinely. I was proud that my investment had helped create 70 jobs. James responded, "Thanks. It's nice to achieve something through actual hard work, you know." I smiled and said nothing. But something was shifting inside me. Each comment was a small deposit into an account that was earning compound interest. Eventually, there would be a reckoning. The breaking point came in November 2024. I'd been tracking Anderson Logistics' performance closely, as I always did. The company was doing well, $35 million in revenue, $2.8 million in EBITDA, solid growth trajectory. My 30% stake was worth approximately $8.4 million. But the quarterly reports showed concerning trends. Expenses were creeping up faster than revenue. There were luxury expenditures that didn't make business sense. $180,000 for executive vehicles, $95,000 for a leadership retreat at a resort in Cabo, $45,000 for office renovations that seemed purely cosmetic. James had also dramatically increased his salary. $520,000 annually, up from $180,000 just 2 years earlier. For a company doing $35 million in revenue, that was aggressive. He's treating the company like a personal piggy bank, Richard told me during our quarterly review. The fundamentals are still solid, but the discipline is slipping. Can you push back? I've tried. He gets defensive. Last month he told me that if Apex wasn't happy, maybe we should find another investment. That comment landed differently than James intended. Find another investment. He was dismissing his largest shareholder, his anonymous sister, like an inconvenience. Something in me hardened. Set up a formal board call, I told Richard. I want to listen in. The call happened a week later. Richard raised concerns about the burn rate and suggested James reduce his compensation until the company hit $50 million in revenue. James's response was immediate and defensive. I built this company from nothing. I work constantly. I deserve to be compensated fairly. The compensation should be proportional to the company's stage, Richard said calmly. Maybe you should let me run my company the way I see fit. It's not just your company, James. Apex owns 30%. Then maybe Apex should find another investment if they're not happy. After the call ended, I sat in my apartment staring at my laptop. My brother had no idea he'd just told me to leave. No idea that 6 years of suppressed resentment had finally found its target. I was done being invisible. Thanksgiving was in 2 weeks. My parents hosted Thanksgiving at their home in Evanston. The same house I grew up in, with the same creaky stairs and the same smell of turkey and pie. The whole family gathered. Mom and Dad, James and Michelle, now with their 2 kids. My younger sister Emma and her fiancé. And me, the disappointing daughter, arriving in my old Prius with a bottle of wine and a truth I'd been hiding for 6 years. I hadn't decided to reveal anything. Not consciously. But I could feel the pressure building inside me like water behind a dam. Dinner started normally. We went around the table saying what we were grateful for. Dad, family, always. Mom, everyone's health. Emma, my upcoming wedding. James, the success of Anderson Logistics and the hard work that built it. When it was my turn, I said, good investments. James made a small sound. Not quite a snort, but close. Must be nice, he said, to just watch money grow without actually doing anything. Michelle touched his arm. James. What? I'm just making conversation. The table went quiet. I felt Emma watching me with concern. James, I said carefully, what do you think I do all day? He shrugged. I don't know, Alex. Yoga? Lunch with friends? Living the trust fund life. The trust fund grandma left me generates $80,000 a year. Right. Plus whatever's left from that startup thing. This startup thing was a $180 million exit. Years ago. And you've been coasting ever since. He took a sip of wine. Look, I'm not trying to be harsh, but some of us build things. Some of us create jobs and contribute to the economy. And some of us. He trailed off, but his gesture toward me finished the sentence. Some of us what, James? Some of us flowed. It is what it is. I set down my fork. The dam was breaking. Can I ask you something? About Anderson Logistics. He looked surprised by the pivot. Sure. Your founding investor. Apex Capital Partners. What do you know about them? What's that got to do with anything? Humor me. He frowned. They're an investment firm out of Delaware. Patient capital, hands-off approach. Why? Do you know who owns Apex Capital Partners? Some fund manager. I deal with their representative, Richard Chin. He sits on my board. Richard Chin is my attorney. The table went completely still. James laughed, but it was uncertain. What? Apex Capital Partners is an LLC I created in 2018. I'm the managing member. I structured it to be anonymous specifically so you wouldn't know it was me. He stared at me. I gave you $2.3 million when no one else would fund your company. I own 30% of Anderson Logistics. I've received quarterly reports for 6 years. I've watched every strategic decision, every expansion, every expense. That's not possible. It's completely documented. Richard can confirm everything.
James's face cycled through disbelief, confusion, and something darker. You're saying you've been spying on my company for 6 years? I'm saying I've been your largest investor for 6 years, while you called me a freeloader. Mom's hand had gone to her mouth. Dad looked like he'd been slapped. Emma was staring at me with wide eyes. Michelle spoke first, her voice sharp. Is this some kind of joke? Because it's not funny. It's not a joke. You're telling me you've been secretly funding our life, watching us, and you never said anything? I wanted James to succeed without feeling indebted to me. Indebted? James's voice rose. You've been playing puppet master with my company for 6 years, and you think I should be grateful? I think you should be aware of who actually made your success possible. I made my success possible. I worked 80-hour weeks. I built the relationships. I ran the operations. I did that, Alex, not you. With my money.
Which I didn't ask for, because you didn't know it existed. But you needed it, James. No one else would fund you. I was the only investor who believed in your business. The table had devolved into chaos. Mom was asking confused questions. Dad was trying to calm everyone down. The kids had stopped eating, sensing the tension. James stood up abruptly. I need air. He walked out to the backyard. After a moment, I followed. He was standing by the old swing set, the one we'd played on as kids. His shoulders were tight with anger. "This is insane," he said without turning around. "You've been lying to everyone for 6 years. You've been dismissing me for 6 years, calling me a freeloader while I funded your dream. Because you acted like a freeloader. How was I supposed to know? You could have asked. You could have been curious about my life instead of assuming you knew everything about it." He turned to face me. His eyes were red. "Do you have any idea what this feels like? Finding out your whole company exists because your little sister felt sorry for you. I didn't feel sorry for you. I believed in your business plan. I saw an investment opportunity. Bullshit. You did this to feel superior. To watch me struggle while you held all the cards." I wanted to deny it, but he wasn't entirely wrong. Maybe, I admitted. Maybe part of me liked knowing something you didn't. But I also genuinely wanted you to succeed. Both things can be true. And now what? You reveal everything at Thanksgiving dinner to humiliate me in front of the family. You called me a freeloader. In front of the same family. So this is revenge? This is truth. Finally, we stood there, two siblings who'd been lying to each other in different ways for years. "What do you want, Alex?" James asked finally. "What's the endgame here?" "I want you to see me. I want this family to know who I actually am instead of who they decided I was. And my company? My stake? Are you going to pull your investment to punish me?" I'd thought about it. I'd fantasized about it during months of accumulated resentment. But standing here, watching my brother's fear and anger, the fantasy felt hollow. "No," I said. "I'm not going to destroy your company. But things are going to change." "What kind of change?" "You're going to cut your salary to something reasonable. You're going to stop treating company money like a personal account. And you're going to acknowledge to the family, to your employees, to anyone who asks that I was your founding investor. No more self-made mythology. And if I refuse, then I'll exercise my shareholder rights to bring an additional board oversight. Or I'll sell my stake to someone who will. Your choice." He was quiet for a long time. "I need to think," he said. "Take your time. But James, for what it's worth, I am proud of what you built. You're a good operator. You work hard. The company is successful because of your effort. I just provided the foundation. I went back inside, made awkward apologies to my parents, and drove back to Cambridge. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exhausted. The secret I'd carried for 6 years was finally out, and I had no idea what would happen next. The week after Thanksgiving was chaos. My phone rang constantly. Mom wanting to understand. Dad wanting to mediate. Emma wanting to debrief. James's calls I let go to voicemail. Michelle sent me a long text message. Part of it was angry. How could I do this to their family, to their stability, to their sense of who they were? But part of it was surprisingly vulnerable. She'd always felt like James's success was slightly unreal, she admitted. Like they were living a life they hadn't quite earned. Now she understood why. I didn't know how to respond, so I didn't. James finally came to my apartment on Saturday, 6 days after Thanksgiving. He looked rough, unshaven, tired, clearly not sleeping well. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. He walked into my small living room and looked around. The IKEA furniture, the modest space, the complete absence of wealth signaling. The same way everyone looked when they visited. "This is really where you live?" "Yes." "You have $340 million and you live like a graduate student?" "I don't need more than this." He sat on my couch. I took the chair across from him. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "I've been going through the financials," he finally said. "Looking at the original term sheet, the investment structure, all of it. Richard confirmed everything. And you gave me incredibly favorable terms. Patient capital, no aggressive oversight, reasonable equity stake for the investment size. Any other investor would have demanded more control, more reporting, more involvement. I wanted you to feel like you were running your own company. I did feel that. That's the problem." He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "I built my entire identity around being a self-made founder. And it turns out I was never self-made at all. The funding was mine. The success was yours. Those aren't the same thing. It doesn't feel that way right now." "I know." He really looked at me, for what felt like the first time in years. Why didn't you tell me? At the beginning, before all the resentment built up. I tried to tell you about Meridian Systems. Remember how that went? He winced. I was jealous. You were younger and you'd already achieved more than I probably ever would. It felt unfair. So I learned to hide. It was easier than fighting for recognition. That's messed up, Alex. Yes, it is. He rubbed his face with both hands. We're both messed up, aren't we? You hiding everything, me being a dismissive ass, neither of us actually talking to each other. It runs in the family. Almost a smile. Not quite. Here's what I'm thinking, he said. You gave me terms that were fair, maybe even generous. You supported the company through rough years without interfering. Whatever your motives were, the investment was good for Anderson Logistics. But you also manipulated me. You let me believe I was independent when I wasn't. You watched me mock you while holding information that would have stopped me. That's not okay either. He was right. I'd told myself I was being generous, but I'd also been controlling. Deciding what James could know, what truth he deserved. Playing God with his self-image. I'm sorry, I said. For the manipulation. For not being honest. For enjoying the secret power of it. Thank you. He took a breath. I'm sorry, too. For the comments. For dismissing you. For being so wrapped up in my own insecurity that I couldn't see what you were actually doing with your life. We sat with that for a moment. 2 apologies that didn't erase the past, but acknowledged it. So what now? I asked. I want to restructure things. Above board, no secrets. I'll cut my salary, $300,000 until we hit $50 million in revenue. The luxury expenses stop. And you come to board meetings as yourself, not through Richard. And the family narrative? I'll tell people the truth. That you were my founding investor. That Anderson Logistics exists because you believed in me when no one else did. That's going to hurt your ego. My ego needs to hurt for a while. He almost smiled. Besides, turns out my little sister is some kind of investment genius. Maybe I should be bragging about that instead. I didn't quite trust this transformation. It was too quick, too clean. Real change takes longer than a week. James, I want this to work. But I don't want to pretend everything is fixed when it isn't. What do you mean? I mean we have 6 years of damage to repair. You're still going to have moments of resentment. I'm still going to have moments of anger. We're not going to magically become best friends because we had one honest conversation. So, what do you suggest? We take it slow. We rebuild trust over time. And we keep having hard conversations when we need to, instead of letting things fester. He nodded slowly. I can do that. We'll see. It's been 6 months since that Thanksgiving dinner. Things are better, but they're not perfect. They're real. James cut his salary and sold the luxury vehicles. The leadership retreat this year was 3 days at a conference center in Wisconsin instead of a resort in Cabo. He's learning to run a leaner company. He also raised $2.5 million from Summit Partners, diversifying his capital base like I suggested. They're holding him accountable in ways that are good for the business. Anderson Logistics is on track to hit $45 million in revenue this year. At board meetings, I sit as myself now. It was awkward at first. The other investors didn't know what to make of me, this invisible sister who turned out to be the founding angel. But they've gotten used to it. Some of them have even started sending me deal flow, recognizing that my investment in James wasn't a fluke. My relationship with my parents is still complicated. They're proud of me now, they say, but I can tell they're also uncomfortable with how much they missed. Mom overcompensates by asking detailed questions about my investments. Dad sends me articles about angel investing that I've usually already read. It's awkward, but it's progress. Emma and I meet monthly now. I'm helping her build an investment portfolio with her savings. She's a quick learner. James is different. Not transformed, people don't transform, but adjusted. He catches himself when he's about to make dismissive comments. He asks about my work. He's even referred a few founders to me who weren't right for Anderson Logistics, but might be good investment opportunities. Last month, at a family dinner, he introduced me to a business colleague. This is my sister Alex. She's the angel investor who funded Anderson Logistics. Without her, none of this exists. The colleague was impressed. James looked genuinely proud. Later, he pulled me aside. You know what's funny? I spent years being jealous of your success, trying to prove I was better. And the whole time, you were quietly surpassing everything I'd ever accomplish. It's not a competition, James. I know, but if it were, you'd win. He smiled, and I'm okay with that now. I'm not sure I believe him completely, but I believe he's trying. That's more than I had a year ago. My brother called me a freeloader at Thanksgiving dinner. He was wrong. I was the foundation his entire success was built on. But I was wrong too. Hiding the truth wasn't generosity, it was control. And revenge, when it came, didn't feel as satisfying as I'd imagined. What feels satisfying is this: being visible, being known, having hard conversations instead of accumulating secret resentments. I'm not the family disappointment anymore. I'm not the invisible investor. I'm just Alex, flawed, successful, still figuring it out. And for the first time in 6 years, my family actually sees me. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment below. Have you ever hidden your success from people who underestimated you? Have you had a family reckoning that changed everything? I want to hear your stories. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I share stories like this every week, tales of hidden truths, family drama, and the moments that change everything. Until next time.